Welcome to Clubhouse with a review of Ritsuka Saeki from Kotobukiya's Sousai Shojo Teien 1/10th line of kits, which in case you didn't know, is Kotobukiya's series of kits depicting normal girls without any guns or robot armor or swords. Ritsuka is the last of the 3 girls announced for the line after Koyomi Takanashi and Madoka Yuki, and just like the others, she is in extremely high demand, with Kotobukiya expecting the initial round of kits to sell out very quickly and the next batch not arriving until November. There's also a review of Madoka and Koyomi as well, so make sure to swing by and check them out if you haven't seen them yet. Links are in the description below. Getting right down to business, Ritsuka was released on July 28, 2021 for a price of 6,600 yen. The illustrator, as always, is Mr. N. Murakura, who continues to be the main draw of the series with his beautiful artwork and character designs. Ritsuka is shown on the box with a dynamic pose with the center line turning at the neck, and then balancing again with another turn at the waist, whereas the previous 2 illustrations are largely in a straight upright pose. Kotobukiya gives credit to its model designers, and this kit is credited to Maruya on the English site and Yunosuke Maruie on the Japanese site, and he's been responsible for all 3 releases so far in the line. The box itself measures 19 by 31 by 11 centimeters, which is actually thicker than the original 2 girls, and part of it is due to the bulky mold of the hair pieces. The box is supposed to come with a protective sheet like this one here for Koyomi, but mine didn't have it because the store took it off. But if you get one, yours will likely come with that sheet. The front itself continues the confident layout with Ritsuka's information taking up just a little bit of the top left corner, and then her name in the lower right in her own handwriting, and then a tiny little Kotobukiya logo which is as confident as ever because the rest of the space is entirely for the beautiful illustration from Mr. Murakura. The short side of the box repeats most of the information from the front, and the theme color this time is yellow. The vertical side of the box gives us a quick rundown of all the faces, the hairstyles, and the skirt parts that we get, along with all the accessories. The other side of the box has the unpainted kit and the water slide decals for the eyes that we get inside the kit. Inside the box, we get Ritsuka spread across a good 18 runners, with 2 of them being these joints right here made of the very hard and very tough polyoxymethylene. These are different designs from the ones that we got in the previous 2 kits, and we're going to have a look at them in a little bit more detail later. The hands themselves come on this runner that's made of soft PVC, and they each now have these flags on them which prevents cuts from digging small pits onto the soft pieces. Then there's the stand which we've gotten in all the previous kits, but this time there's an extra runner with these new arms. And we're still not done. We get this soft cloth piece which I have facing the wrong direction here, and the other side actually has a leather texture on it, which we're gonna see later in the review. The faces come pre-painted as we'd expect, and they're beautiful as always. Then the skirts also come pre-painted with the white lines going across the bottom, and you may have noticed that this blue runner has a lot of empty spaces on it, and these are actually for the skirt parts which comes right off this runner, as you can see right here, but they've been cleaned up really nicely, and I can't for the life of me find where the gates used to be. This time the panty parts aren't pre-painted pieces because maybe they finally realized that there really wasn't any point to it and it was just more sensible to mold it in colored plastic in the first place. Here's the water slide decals that we saw in the box, and as always we get an identical pair for each of the faces, and you can have each style looking to the left or to the right. This time we don't get any decals with the white lines on the skirt, so if you paint them you're gonna lose that detail unfortunately. The instructions come as a staple booklet as always, and it starts us off with Ritsuka and some expressions, not all of which we get in this kit. The other side gives us a head swap between the different kits, and the bottom here has the summer uniform of St. Iris Gakuen Girls High School's summer uniform, and then a plug for her accompanying accessories set with a suitcase and some cameras. Then it's all assembly instructions until the very end here, which has that same really nice page that you can scan to plan out your very own color scheme. And then it's the color guide on the last page here. Then we also get this separate sheet for the parts list, and on it is a link to the page with English instructions. And as of this video, they finally added Madoka's instructions, but there still isn't one for Koyomi nor Ritsuka. Then there's also this sheet with the minor error corrections in the instructions, which I'm sure they'll probably fix for the November batch. And lastly, we have the parts ordering list for replacing any of the runners, but of course that's for Japanese customers only. About 2.5 hours later, we get Ritsuka here fully colored straight out of the box. These kits will take a little bit longer because they do have really thick gates that often end on curved surfaces, so you really do need a knife to sculpt the shape carefully out of the plastic of the gates. There is this one pair of unfortunate seam lines on the arms right here that cut across the forearms, and they really don't look that good. But otherwise, most of the others, like this one right here on the side of the torso, or the ones here on the legs, are very thin, and the two edges are very accurately aligned. They look very clean even if you don't plan to fill them in. On the nicer side of things, the buttons on the waist here are beautifully painted in gold. Koyomi was already pretty nuts with her buttons that are part separated, but this time Kotobukiya felt even that wasn't good enough and they just painted them outright, which is a good kind of crazy that we like on expensive kits like this. But maybe I should address the obvious elephant in the room here, which is that really pretty outfit that she has on, which is lovely and all that, but it's not a school uniform. It's an anime school uniform maybe, but it's no real world school uniform for sure. But really, let's be real, it's a waitress outfit, and she's an anime waitress. Well, what's so bad about that, you might ask? Anime waitresses are totally my thing, you might say. Well, I think the barrier to entry in this whole series is already pretty darn high as it is, what with buying model kits of Japanese schoolgirls. I mean, I have no shame, so I can have Madoka, and I can have Koyomi, and I can have Ritsuka, and I like them all. But I imagine a lot of people get really shy and too afraid to buy Ritsuka because they don't want to risk being judged, and I kinda understand that sentiment really. But you're watching this video, so maybe you're not such a person. And owning all three kits, I can tell you that Ritsuka is the best looking of all three releases. And no really, you may not have noticed it, but she is actually a big upgrade from Koyomi and Madoka. First, let's look at the head height. She's clearly taller than the other two girls, which you might think, well yeah, big deal, she's some sort of foreign white girl, so of course she's tall. But her height is a result of some adjustments that Kotobukiya has done. Let's look a little bit lower. You see the knees? Mr. Maruie has been adjusting the knee height already on Koyomi, but it wasn't as radical, and this time the knees are shifted even higher up, so that the shins are much longer by ratio to the thighs, which look much nicer even if it's a little less realistic. Here, let's see the leg alone against one of Koyomi's, and you see the drastic difference in length? And if we put it together with Madoka, it's even more shocking, to the point where you wouldn't think that these are just two releases apart in the series in under a year. And the same goes with the arms. With the power of hindsight, we can see Mr. Maruie being quite safe with Madoka, and her arms are actually covered with her sweater, so the shape of the arms are largely obscured and we get only an abstract outline. By Koyomi's release, the shape is much less abstracted with the tighter blazer, which gives us the general shape of her arms. But this time we go all the way, having Ritsuka's arms mostly bare, so there really is no room for any bad sculpting, and guess what? These arms are some of the slimmest, some of the most delicately shaped things that you're ever going to build as a builder. And I don't mean they're fragile, I just mean that they really are finely shaped. Oh, but we're not done yet. It's the same story with the waist, with Madoka's sweater obscuring much of the shape, and then Koyomi's much tighter cut on the blazer with the V lines on both sides. And then this time we have Ritsuka's impossibly tiny waist with the shirt top, leaving absolutely no room to cheat the shape of the bodyline. So Ritsuka's sculpt has to really earn every bit of how beautiful she is, and this is some real skill and there really are no cheap tricks. Now don't click away yet, I'm not perving out to Ritsuka, I swear. Because to anyone who draws, and if you've learned about anatomy, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it's hard to get these body lines right. And even when it's a little bit off, it's really noticeable. So whether or not her waitress outfit might make you shy, this is still without question a top of the line sculpt that I really challenge you to find me a better one with full articulation like Ritsuka here. While we're looking at the waist, I want to also look at the waist joint, which has been simplified from the old one right here, which has a really sophisticated 2-axis design, to this simple fixed ball joint on a stick. And this is actually a really smart change because you may have noticed that the girls don't actually have any waistband anyway that couldn't just be handled with a simple ball joint, so they got rid of all the redundant engineering. At the same time, the wrist joints have been updated as well. Not only are they smaller because of the bare arms, but the old wrists move on one axis and have no side-to-side roll, and the new wrist allows you to roll the joint along the extra peg, so you have even more range when you pose the hands. So So yeah, while most of us expected Ritsuka to be a routine third entry to this already really great line, she ended up being an aggressive upgrade over the previous two girls, to the point where she can really make the excellent Madoka look really conservative and a little bit outdated by comparison. Next, let's have a closer look at that crazy long ponytail that she has, which has this lagging swing that helps communicate the motion that she's in the middle of. For Koyomi, I think that was her greatest limitation because her short hair just isn't able to convey as much information, and I think this was one of the best parts of Ritsuka that'll help her look great in all different kinds of poses. And of course, there is a price to that beautiful ponytail. Specifically, these flying strands of hair that are frozen in mid-motion, those are pretty fragile as you can imagine, and you absolutely must not drop Ritsuka because of that. But the problem is, she is actually pretty back heavy because of that ponytail, and she does have a slight bias towards falling backwards. So even though she looks really nice, you really do have to make sure to take good care of her and keep her safe. The ponytail itself is articulated, and it swivels up and down along a single axis. And you can also rotate it along its peg, which will put it into almost any position that you're going to need for any pose. The joint here is all hard polystyrene against polystyrene, and on mine it's already a little bit loose, so you're probably going to have to thicken it up before very long. The big red ribbon here is tied into a bow, and even though the middle space right here isn't actually hollow, it's sunken in enough that it's never going to draw attention and it's never going to break the illusion. As with the other two girls, you get the other hairstyles on their own complete head, so all you need to do is pop the first head off, and then you put on the other head. And then you have a quick and easy hairstyle change. And by the way, the neck joint this time is finally properly anchored down, so you won't get the old problem of where you're gonna pull off the whole neck when you're swapping heads. And for the second hairstyle, it's these two really long braids, which look really nice of course on their own, but actually Kotobukiya has gone the extra mile and the braids can be pulled off like this. And you can swap in these other ones on both sides, and that gives us the hairstyle mid-motion, which you'll really appreciate once you start posing her, because the straight ones just really don't work at all unless she's standing still. The little ribbons at the end of the braids are uncolored, so you're gonna have to help Ritsuka out and color them in. The last hairstyle has her hair completely let down, and there's really a lot of volume on her hair, which is enough to make any girl jealous. The strands on the back here flow straight down with a slight wave as you'd expect, and the lines along the strands are used to mask the seams on here, which is a very sensible choice and it's really well done. Comparatively, this hairstyle allows for fewer poses, and I imagine this will be the less popular choice for most people when they're displaying Ritsuka. Not that it's bad looking, but it's really hard to match the other two styles that can communicate so much more action and so much more context. For faces, we get 4 of them, with the plain smile that we've been looking at so far, and then this big grin, and then this really nice looking winking face, and then this one here when you've made her angry. We also get unpainted parts for each one, so you can use the water slide decals without having to destroy any of the pre-painted faces. To swap out a face, you first take off the bangs here at the front, and then you lift the face off. And then you put in another one and replace the bangs. So the process is reasonably easy to do, but you will have to watch out when handling the hair. And here's that smirk that we saw earlier, which fits Ritsuka pretty well because she's supposed to be bright and pretty outgoing. And then here's that winking face, which a lot of Japanese fans really seem to like, and I think you can see why. It's very sweet and it's very charming, and it has so much character. And then we have the angry face, which is good if tsundere girls are really your thing. So the face parts here continue to be perfectly printed as they have been in the previous 2 releases, and I know I say this every time, but it really is no small feat to make a 3D sculpt look as good as Mr. Morikura's character design. I mean, these kits may cost a lot, but Kotobukiya really puts that money to work on things like this. And for hands, we get an upgrade as well with 7 pairs. Madoka had 5, and so did Koyomi. First, we have these open palms that we've been seeing so far, and then we have these holding hands that can accept any pegged accessory, and then we have these new pointing hands which actually have another use that you might not have realized. Then these 4 sets of holding hands starting with this narrow grip, and then this wider grip, and then the widest one here, and then a rectangular grip. So here's the open palm with its really delicate fingers. Then the holding hand, and you can see the hole on the palm where the peg's gonna fit in. And then the pointing finger, which is unique to Ritsuka. And then here's the smallest grip. And then the medium grip. And the wide grip. And then finally the rectangular grip. I suspect the wide grip is for the upcoming umbrella option set, which looks really nice, but that also makes me wonder if they're gonna include hands for the other two girls, or they're just gonna leave it incompatible with them. The selection of hands here are mostly for working with different accessories more so than posing, which is a bit of a shame, and there's still no closed hands, which only Madoka has so far, which is also a shame. The pointing finger, in case you didn't already guess, is actually also for Ritsuka to swipe her phone with, which the other girls can't do. And that's a good segue to the phone right here, which is a simple white piece, so you're gonna have to paint the screen black. The back here suggests that there are multiple cameras on this phone. It's a phone and we get one with each girl, so the one this time that we get is in this nice clean white color. The other accessory we get is this backpack here with a really nice sculpt where the bag looks like soft fabric, and the metal clasps are sharp and they're really detailed. The seam line is hidden here on the side as a seam would be on a real bag, and the bottom here has a slightly awkward hole that's for the display stand, and I imagine a lot of modelers will opt to fill this in to keep the bag looking a bit more normal. But of course, the real star here are those nice straps at the front that use that fabric piece that we saw earlier in the box. You'd perfectly expect this kit to just have fixed plastic straps that are molded, but no, they went full crazy and they gave us a full leather strap here. And now it's a little bit unfortunate that the straps are black and the bag is brown, and I suspect that this is in case you need to paint the bag another color, then the straps will still match reasonably well in black because you can't paint the straps. But to be honest, it does look a little bit awkward in a different color like this. But anyway, the straps can be adjusted by pulling up this piece right here, where we can see the strap threaded through this piece. There's a bit of slack for adjusting how long the strap is, and this does mean that you're gonna have to fiddle this quite a bit to get the right length that looks nice, and it will take a bit of patience. You've probably noticed this hole in the middle here, which is for this rod piece here that mounts the bag directly onto the back, which is great because the bag would be really loose if it was only held with those soft straps. You plug the bag into the hole on the back, which is why the bag itself needs to replace that hole that it now occupies. And then we have Ritsuka ready to go home after school. Much like everything else about Ritsuka, this is a more difficult item to make than the handheld bags that we got previously, and it's really great to see the series really tried new things with new materials, even if the strap colors aren't right and it still bugs me a little bit, only because it looks so nice otherwise. Now Ritsuka's hole on the back is actually a little bit higher up than the other girls, as you can see here. So does that mean that you can't use the bag with the other girls? Actually not at all. It fits on the Koyomi here without looking strange at all, and you really won't notice that it actually sits lower. But because of this lower position, you will have to adjust the straps, and they're just long enough to cover that extra distance, and they will come loose if you're a little bit uncareful. But short of that, this bag can be given to the other girls without any serious issues. And one more thing is, all of Ritsuka's hairstyle have this bag in mind, of course, like this untied one here that has more than enough clearance inside the hair for the bag. I mean, I'm sure you expected this to work, especially when everything about this kit is so thoroughly thought out. For skirts, we get 3 options, which is the standard for the series. We get this plain resting skirt that we've seen so far, and then we have this dynamic one, and then we have this sitting one. The resting one this time actually has a really nice line that bows outwards from the waist, which actually accentuates the waist to hip ratio, so it really plays some fashion sleight of hand here to make Ritsuka prettier, but any girl will tell you that that's basically what dresses do, although Ritsuka's here does float way more than any real dress would, and gravity is a real thing, and any cosplayer will tell you that it is their biggest enemy. To swap skirts, we have to remove the upper torso, and then we can replace the resting skirt with the dynamic one, and then replace the upper torso. The dynamic skirt is still an important part of all these kits, and the best poses will usually come with this part, and the one here works extra well with this new frilly inner lining, which gives us the extra lag between the bounce of the 2 layers. but at the same time, this skirt always cuts it way too close in exposing the panties, which I'm sure they meant it to be like that, but it really was a bit more tasteful on Koyomi and Madoka in comparison. I mean, maybe it's a con to you, or maybe it's a huge pro. I mean, we don't judge here. Then lastly, we have the sitting skirt, which replaces the entire hip section, and you will have to swap in the lower legs as well. Kotobukiya made Ritsuka's legs really long, and by god, they're gonna put them to work, and there's just no question that this pose really shows them off big time. Now, I've heard more than a few people say that the visible joints on the knees are a real deal breaker, and I guess I agree on some level. I mean, of course the gaping joints don't look natural, but it's sensible on an articulated kit, and I don't really see what else they could have done unless they gave us an entirely static lower body. And by now you're used to seeing Ritsuka upstage the other girls, and even for the sitting pose it has to be cross-legged to make things harder. I mean, wait, no, that didn't sound right. Kotobukiya is showing off, that's what I mean. And yes, I know it has to fit the different characters as well, but come on, Ritsuka's just plain fighting dirty against the other girls at this point, and it's really not fair. And for the super fashion conscious folks here, and there actually are a lot of people who enjoy the clothing styles on these kits, here are the shoes side by side, and surprise surprise, Koyomi and Madoka share the same mold, and Ritsuka get a new style that's slimmer and more pointy. For the stand, we get the jigsaw based one that the other girls also have, with the standard Kotobukiya styled arm on top, but this time we get 2 new mounting arms. The first one we already mentioned before, and this one here is for the bag with the upturned peg that goes right in that hole on the bottom. This other arm is much longer than the standard one, and this actually gives a much greater range of poses by keeping the girl further out from the stem, so that you can do poses like this one here, which you really couldn't do before with the standard short arm. And if it isn't clear at this point, then yes, Kotobukiya is totally playing favorites here with Ritsuka, and it really isn't fair. Of course, for her and the other girls, the holes are 3mm, so you can use any action base or most Japanese action figure stands with any of them if you want. On to the articulation. Starting from the top, Ritsuka looks up quite a lot, and she looks down just as nicely. She can rotate a full circle side to side, but I'm not doing that to her. Then the shoulder joint can drop down to free up a range of motion. The arms swing upwards 90 degrees, and they rotate around a full circle as long as you move the hair out of the way. The forearms rotate a full circle, and the elbows go up to just a hair above 90 degrees. The wrist we already know lets the hand pivot like this, and then the peg on the wrist side can rotate like this, and the peg on the hand can also rotate. The waist rolls around a little bit on its ball joint. With the dynamic skirt, Ritsuka can kick up as much as the skirt will allow, and she can kick back with the same limitation. The knee can bend a bit over 100 degrees, which is actually better than Koyomi and Madoka. The leg can pivot just above the ankles, and then the feet can swing upwards this much, and then downwards this much. And the feet rotate side to side like this. Ritsuka continues the series' priority of putting nice looks before articulation, so while I think the range you get is perfectly reasonable, I also can't really rebut the other reviewers who find the waist and the leg movements really limiting, because the waist still basically has no forward or backwards bend. So no, she's not gonna challenge the likes of an SF figure arts figure, and you really can't turn her into your dream of a fighting waitress, so I'm sorry. And before we wrap up, here's Ritsuka matched with the other 2 girls' school uniforms. Oh, and she's still compatible with the other heads from Megami Device and other kits with this large ball that you can swap into the neck joint. And let's not forget, here's Madoka wearing Ritsuka's uniform, and she looks even more like a waitress somehow. With all that said, here's a Hobby Clubhouse 3-point verdict on Ritsuka Saeki from Kotobukiya's Sousai Shojo Teien line. Number 1, she has superior engineering that really outshines her peers. I mean, let's just get the obvious out of the way. Kotobukiya made so many upgrades to Ritsuka all at once that it really isn't even fair to the other girls. I mean, she's taller with those crazy long legs, and she has better stuff than the other girls like the skirts, and she even has more stuff like her hands. I mean, the entire design works together to make her beautiful in ways that really makes the other girls seem really conservative by comparison. And for the quality of the kit alone, she's the recommended choice by far among the 3 girls. I mean, I like them all, but facts are facts. And number 2, beauty comes at a price. And girls know this logic well, that beauty doesn't come cheap, and 6,600 yen can get you a pretty nice master grade kit. And yeah, I know they're totally different things, but I do still have to acknowledge that there are people who aren't that interested in this very specific niche of kits. You know, a more down-to-earth regular girl that's sculpted unreasonably nicely. And if that really isn't your thing, then this price tag is really quite off-putting. Now for me, I find it okay because there really are no other choices for any other kits that make plain girls and make them extremely lovely like this, so I'm really okay with the price. And only if you're in a similar camp will you be happy to pay this much to have something that's really nice to look at. And number 3, this kit delivers on its promises. If you like what you see in the pre-production shots, then this kit will be just as good if not better. Because Kotobukiya knows that it made a really beautiful kit on top of a really beautiful design, so they don't really have to rely on any cheap sleight of hand nonsense in their photos. So what you see is what you get, and Ritsuka comes out of the box looking as nice as Kotobukiya promises you. And I'm not sure I can so easily say that for something that does look so good in their photos. So that's a review of Ritsuka Saeki. And now you know that there are perfectly good reasons why you may have fallen so much in love with her. This is a kit that only Kotobukiya can make, and you're not going to find this anywhere else, whether it's Bandai or Good Smile. Thank you so much for watching. Come look us up on social media with updates on upcoming videos and sneak peeks at future projects. Links are in the description below. Or hang out here some more with one of these other videos, like the review of Koyomi or Madoka. But before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified of new videos from Hobby Clubhouse, and I'll see you next time.